All right. Well, welcome everyone. All of our new friends here. Some people that Tim, Mick, and I have a privilege of talking to. A few others that joined this program late here. So this is our webinar in particular on Broadcom partnership and licensing changes that are happening with it. Atomic Data, represented here, Tim Grosshuesch and myself will be talking, are officially a premier partner in offering white label services, and we will get into some of those guidelines here today. A few kind of precursor notes here. One, we will show pricing towards the end of this, and we will follow up with material coming out at what that looks like, along with a web form. That web form in particular will have some requests for some bits information, yes, around core count, but yes, also around vSAN and a few other add-on or bolt-on services that come along with this program. Apologize for those of you we have talked to already. This has been an ever-changing learning curve of information for everyone involved, and I appreciate everyone's patience along. So there will be a little bit of repetitive information, but this is up to date with the latest information we have. And my last bit of housekeeping here is there is a Q&A button on the top. Please put any questions you have into the chat. We'll try to address as many as we can here. If we can't, for whatever reason, get to them here in this meeting, we will take them up with either follow-up emails or a follow-up call to talk through some of the details of it. With that said, again, my name is Kyle Johnson. I'm a director of client engagement and new business at Atomic Data. Been here 12 and a half years or somewhere in that realm, generally running anything client-facing. So just a little bit on Atomic Data for those that aren't familiar with us. We're a organization based in Minneapolis, Minnesota here. We have workforce in roughly 10 states across the US, mostly national side clientele, privately held firm, everyone based in the US, been around for 23 years. We sit with right about 200 employees, and kind of the unique part with our firm is we started out really in the data center realm and moved into managed services, as opposed to people that worked in managed services and moved more into the data center space. So we have a ton of expertise around heavy networking. We do a lot of networking for large venues and data centers, as well as the infrastructure as a service, and anything kind of peripheral to that is kind of our core competencies and really what we're going for. You can see a list of a handful of badges, a handful of different partners that we do work with for Atomic purposes. We also work with a plethora of other ones outside of that. And then a little bit more around VMware and Broadcom in particular, as that is the pertinent information we're talking through today. We do run 3 data centers, 2 of them here in Minneapolis, 1 in Dallas. We really do consume VMware top to bottom. It is our core competency, and it's what we do. So Cloud Director instances, mostly production in Minneapolis, some production in Dallas, but it's traditionally been a DR facility for us. Couple photos of just our spaces, some things that we're doing here. And with that being said, I will throw it over towards Tim Grosshuesch here, who will have the meat of this conversation.
Morning. Actually, I've got control. So my name is Tim Grosshuesch. I have been with Atomic Data for about 13 and a half years. I have been in the CSP space for 17 years. Prior to Atomic, I worked for another cloud service provider. I held a number of industry certifications, including design certifications from VMware and Veeam, as well as engineering certifications from VMware, Veeam, Cisco, NetApp, Dell, plenty of others over the course of my career. One of the things I have done have been highly delved and tied into all this documentation and reading through everything that's been published for the last, 6+ weeks now. So a few housekeeping items. Most of this material is centered around cloud service providers. It is tied to everyone in that program, in the VCPP program, the VCAN program, the VSPP program, whatever you've called it. They've rebranded it multiple times over the last, since the inception of that program. There's some pieces here for some reseller information, but there are some definite lines that are different between those 2 programs. Further, this is also focused around infrastructure as a service, running VMs, IaaS. Broadcom is divesting from the end user computing division. Find another piece. We are a United States-based company. All the technical information that I'm going to go through is the same, regardless of what locale you are operating out of. Things around contracts and what is applicable in your region. Everything we're going to talk about is specific to the United States and the pieces that operate here. One thing that has been identified is if you're going to work, whoever you work with for a white labeler, they need to be authorized to work in that country. In addition to this, we'll talk a little bit about some of the other partnerships we have. Veeam is a partner of ours. They are a core part of our Cloud Director environment and engagement. I know there's a number of Veeam partners here on this call. We've very much valued their engagement and have been in deep conversations with them as they also navigate this field and what it means for their business. So, what's changed? Everything has moved to a subscription. Everything. The old VRAM licensing is gone for all of us. Many of us, for all how complex it was very nice to have revenue for a new workload associated directly to our costs. That's all changing. Our business unit is very different than VMware's base unit. We are, Guy Bartram mentioned, he's the director of product marketing. He mentioned in the Slack channel that our business unit, the VCSP program, is about 1.2 billion annual recurring revenue. We are about 7 to 8% of VMware's total revenue stream. And so for us, when they started announcing all the changes and stuff, originally, I honestly didn't think that they'd be touching the VCPP program until 6 months out, further out. We already were doing subscription. It's a very complex program. Everyone here has probably read through and seen the 160-page product usage guide. It's working. It's been helpful for all of us. We were a bit surprised when we found out they were changing it. They were going to terminate our partnership in VMware. And so in full transparency, we started making a lot of phone calls when we found that out because we weren't sure if we were going to be invited to the white label program or to be a premier partner. We were unsure if we were going to have to find someone to associate with, or if it would be something we might be able to offer as a service. Like Kyle said, we have 2 Cloud Director instances. It would take us over a year to transition to anything else to move all of our clients out of our Cloud Director instances. And so because of this commitment, we needed to stay with the program. There's several things that are changing in the naming. So aggregators, Insight and Ingram, that's who exists now for the commercial space in the United States. They are now called Cloud Commerce Managers. As part of this transition, VMware or Broadcom, they are pushing more work, more responsibilities to the Cloud Commerce Managers. Before they handled your reporting, you did your pass-through to them, they might have done some training with you. There was less engagement than where they're going to have in the future. As published in the documents, they identified that Pinnacle partners needed a 7,000 core commit and Premier partners needed a 3,500 core commit. There were asterisks around that, does your business line up with where VMware thinks they are going and who they want as a strategic partner. I'm aware of at least one provider that had 11,000 cores that did not get invited to Pinnacle, and they were also waiting to find out if they were going to be invited to Premier. These changes are very much challenging for all of us. For how the licensing works and how the partnership works, if you are interested in white labeling, and we'll go through more of this as this continues, you will need to become a registered partner. From what I've gleaned in the back channel and in Reddit, it looks like those invitations went out on Friday. You will have to agree those terms and conditions. Once those terms and conditions have been accepted, then you can work with someone and try to find who makes a good white label sense for you if this is a path you are willing to pursue. So let's talk a little bit about timeline. So I mentioned that we got very, very nervous when we found out they were ending the program because we're all in. We all know that VMware is used for many of our businesses at the hypervisor. Some of us use it for storage. Some of us use it for networking. The timeline is very, very aggressive that they've given us. I looked late yesterday and I have not seen any changes to this timeline that is on the slide right now. Between now and the end of this month, we all will continue to do VRAM reporting as we do today. We'll all use our usage meters. It will all flow up. We'll all go to the VCP page and do our reporting. Starting April 1st, we are all supposed to be using core-based licensing and using new license keys that are different than the VCPP keys. On April 30th, so the end of next month, all of our existing VCSP agreements formally end. The first part of May, May 1st, we are supposed to all pay core-based licensing, however it's structured, starting May 1st. May 5th, the VMware Partner Portal, that is going to go end of life. And on May 6th, the Broadcom Partner Portal is fully online. Now, the timeline is very, very aggressive. They have not published any delays to this timeline, but there are a number of things that need to take place for all these pieces to be in place. If you are looking to become a white label, a secondary VCSP, you need to finish your paperwork to be a registered VCSP. You need to enter into an agreement with a Premier or Pinnacle partner that is offering white label services. They need to finish their documentation and their terms and conditions with their Cloud Commerce Manager, and the Cloud Commerce Managers need to have their terms and conditions and legal pieces complete with Broadcom. Those pieces are all not in place. Personally, I think the timeline's going to slide, or we're going to be in some provincial state because of all the legal paperwork that has to happen behind the scenes for this to work. As we went through and started talking to various people weeks ago, we were really trying to find what people were thinking about for contingencies. Some people were looking at completely moving off of the VMware hypervisors and product line entirely. Others, like ourselves, were looking at, we have to find some way to do this. There's no way we can move off in the timeline provided. So many of you have seen this slide or this information presented somewhere. This is the annual list price with a 3-year commit. One of the biggest challenges that is being introduced with this new program is it is a 3-year commit for subscription in order to get a discount. All of us have worked with the 1-year renewal program, which has been great. You can review your environment, you can pay an overage, you can move to the next commit level year after year as your business grows. This is tied to a 3-year commit. For most people on this call, the first line item, VMware Cloud Foundation, is the line item you will need. That includes the hypervisor, the ARIA suite of products, and vSAN. The other items are going to show up if your environment is using NSXT, if you're using AVI load balancing, if you're doing Site Recovery Manager. If you're using Veeam or other products for a disaster recovery solution you have built, those are going to be with that provider's agreement and their marketing and all their pieces. One thing that has been asked multiple times is, I just need the hypervisor. In the reseller product, there is a way just to get the hypervisor and not all the extra pieces. For cloud service providers, all we get is $350. That is the price of admission. That's the price of entry into using VMware products in our cloud services businesses. On the vSAN, I'll talk a little bit about that. Every core on that $350 per core per year annual list price, you get a terabyte of raw storage. It is not a terabyte of usable storage after deduplication, compression, erasure encoding, whatever technologies in vSAN that we all love and are consuming. It is raw storage. If you have 10 1 terabyte drives in, that's 10 terabytes of raw storage. That is what will go against your core count. This is the commitment slide. So this is what we've been given and what everyone is going to be working with in the new program. The yellow indicates a 3-year commit for annual contract value. That is a fixed cost. It turns all of our costs into a fixed cost through the term of the commit for what is known for costs. The gray bar there shows on demand. So let's say you're doing a hardware lifecycle and you're going to have a little more hardware online during your hardware lifecycle. You can do an on-demand charge. In the documentation, that on-demand charge is going to be the MSRP price. There's no discount at all. They are aligning the discount price with the commit. Another use case for on-demand is if you have customers and clients that have seasonal business. Perhaps their business is tied to the fourth quarter. It's a heavy sales cycle here in the United States, as well as much of the world. You may choose to want to run on-demand cores for those clients because most of the year the workload is very low. So that's another possible thing you can look at. The blue line is for incremental. So if you sign some new business and your business grows and you foresee it being there for not just a short term, but being there at least for your commit, you can co-term an incremental commit, which will include the discounts you're already receiving through your white labeler for the rest of the term. Now, the one catch of this, which makes it a little more planning, there is no way to go down. So if you lose a very large client and you fall below what your initial commit is, you are still tied to that commit. It's not like VRAM licensing where you could have some wiggle room, you're going to hit your commit, but you could renegotiate at your 1 year. Or if you were 30,000 and higher for points, it was all overage points anyway. One thing that is very fascinating that they're doing with the gray lines for the on-demand cores is they're actually going to break that down as an hourly charge in the usage meter. That's in the guides. For those of you that have access to the Broadcom partner portal, I would highly recommend reviewing the technical FAQ. That has much of the detail that everyone is going to need to make the decisions around their business in this space. So we see two paths going forward. Most of us are going to choose a commit path. We're going to get a discount. You're in a 3-year contract. You're going to have to take whatever your business is thrown at. What happens if a customer of yours is acquired and they move to wherever the parent company decides to move the workload? Perhaps it's hyperscaler, perhaps it's in someone else's data center. That is the path I think most people are going to be interested in because we know what our costs are, we get the discount. The other path is no commit. So it's MSRP, it's 100% on demand, but it's 100% month to month. And this path is very helpful for those of you that perhaps you have contracts signed with your customers and those contracts don't come due until August. You think those clients will re-sign, but they might not. This allows you to pay a no commit cost for the stopgap until you get that contract in hand and are willing to commit to that. Perhaps you're a business owner. Perhaps with all these changes, you're thinking about maybe selling your business or selling your business unit because of some of these changes. Well, you might be interested in a commit as you work through those. Other things that might cause you to do commit, as I mentioned earlier, is seasonal business. If you have customers that are tied to seasonal business models, you may want to do on-demand pricing because of that. One of the big changes that is going to happen in this new model is support. So for anyone who is white labeling, anyone who's a primary or a secondary VCSP, it's specified in the documentation as a secondary VCSP. That first individual is going to be supported by the parent VCSP, by the white label provider. You will not be able to contact VMware Broadcom directly. That is a major change for all of us. And it isn't just the secondary VCSPs, the primary VCSPs, the people that have the Pinnacle and Premier invitations and are going to build their business, continue to double down on VMware. They now contact cloud commerce managers. They are going to contact Insider Ingram here in the United States and work with them for support. If we open a ticket with Broadcom VMware, Broadcom and the cloud commerce managers are going to be able to see that ticket, interact with that ticket. Broadcom's engagement is really focused around bug fixes, materials issues. They have not published anything at all yet that I've seen around SLAs. Many of you have seen the SLA, you've worked with the SLA for production support in the VRAM program. And if you have a P1 issue, it's something you're very much concerned about. How fast can I get my environment back online? I'm hopeful that there will be an SLA published for how some of that functions for that, and a P1 case will be given the highest level of priority in the system. From who we've spoken with so far that's trying to identify what their next steps are, most of the environments that are out here are primarily using the hypervisor. Some are using vSAN, and only a small percentage of who we've spoken with so far are using NSXT and Avi and Tanzu, and some of the more complex pieces, or using Cloud Director for that matter. And the VMware hypervisor is very, very mature. You know your environments better than everyone. I see a big win with this change. All of us here have probably made a call at some point to Broadcom, to VMware for support. And during that call, we mentioned that we are a service provider and it's multi-tenant and we have these requirements and that it's playing with Cloud Director. And I'm sure everyone on this phone call who's interacted with support has at some point in time experienced the pause, the awkward silence on the call, where the individual in support is unclear how Cloud Director plays with these products, or what are the implications of being in a multi-tenant environment. In this new model, everyone up until Broadcom engagement understands multi-tenancy. They understand cloud service providers. They understand that our revenue stream is tied directly to our customers. We would not run these servers if they weren't generating money for us through our customers. So going forward, there are a lot of things to keep in mind as we all identify what is the best path forward. Everyone on this call knows their business best. We have talked to numerous people where they do some hosting, but it's not their core focus. We've talked to people that are ISPs. We've talked to people that their primary business is backup and recovery. We've talked to people that are heavy in the desktop as a service space. You are going to make the best decision for your business in your local market. All of you are seeing that our costs are going to go up, but the one big advantage of staying with VMware is the ecosystem around it. There's a number of open source alternatives. Those have been talked to death in the forums and Reddit and whatnot. The questions that you need to ask yourself and your customers' needs are, is there a mature ecosystem? Can I back it up? Do I have a vendor that I can partner with, like Veeam, that will help me protect these workloads and build a business model around those things? What does it look like to monitor the product? What does it look like to monitor my customers' workloads? What does patching look like? How does it look to secure the product? Are there concerns about a guest that can break out of the hypervisor vulnerability? Is the vendor going to, work with me and help me through those pieces? And just staffing. There are a massive amount of people that know VMware in our markets, in the United States, in Europe, in Australia. People have been working with this product for 15 years. It's very easy to find somebody who has VMware support. Some of the alternative products that have been looked at, yes, they definitely are cheaper from a licensing perspective, but you're going to go through costs to migrate to it, retrain staff, learn, cut your teeth on it. And some of you have some variability and ability to do that with your clientele. Some on this call definitely can't. Some of you support healthcare, finance, and other organizations that they will just they care about uptime more than anything, and are very low risk. They do not want to take on new risk. Other items to think about is support lifecycle. Is there a reference architecture for some of the other products that people are looking at? What is available to you for optimizing costs? Are there hidden costs that you don't know about by going with somebody else's licensing or support model? So we're going to talk a little bit now about subscription and what are the implications around that. I'm going to boil down a bunch of the material that is in the technical FAQ document. Again, once you have access to the Broadcom Partner Portal, you can go into the VMware Service Provider and you can find that document. It goes into significantly more depth around implications. I'm going to go through the high-level pieces of that document. That document is, for all intents and purposes, our new product usage guide, along with the product licensing guide that is now there. So all of us have been thinking about RAM. We've all been concerned about RAM. None of us have really thought about cores other than our Microsoft Service Provider licensing. We've gotten used to only paying for VMware if we use it. One thing that is a plus with how they've changed it is with the on-demand, it's an hourly charge. It's not like VMware, or not VMware, Microsoft, where our service provider licensing agreements, if you use it for 1 week or the whole month, the cost is the same. As part of working with Atomic Data, we will help you optimize your environment and decrease licensing liabilities. Things such as increasing your oversubscription rate to what is safe for your business and your workload, and reducing your total core counts to reduce what your licensing liabilities are. For some of you we've spoken to, the new cost model is actually more affordable than the RAM-based model. So reducing the licensing liability, as I said earlier, all we have is the VCF SKU. We do not have vSphere Foundation, VVF. We do not have vSphere Standard. If all you're using is the hypervisor, you still need to get the VCF SKU. Now, that might be a big plus for those of you that aren't using RA operations today, because that was an added charge in the VRAM-based model that we've been working on. You'll get access to Log Insight, which is a phenomenal logging solution. You'll get access to Network Insight, which is very valuable for seeing your networking paths and flows. If you're running NSXT, it is extremely helpful, especially if you're looking at introducing distributed firewalling into your environments. You get access to VROPS, RA operations, sorry, they rebranded it and it's been vRealize operations forever. But RA operations will help you do some right sizing in your environment, help you optimize how many vCPUs are on a machine, as well as help you find hotspots and do heat maps in your environment. There is a 16-core minimum charge per socket. So if you have some older hardware in your environment that is low density on cores, you are going to pay 16 cores. So if we have, for example, let's say you have a host that is a dual socket 12-core host. That's 24 cores in the server. Although you only have 24 cores in the server, you will have 32 cores of licensing because it is 2 sockets. The nice thing about this 16-core minimum socket is that it aligns with Microsoft licensing. For trying to map out costs and align the costs between VMware and Microsoft, this gets a little easier in the new world for all of us. And it makes it much easier to plan around our known fixed costs. This is also going to lead to a number of new designs going forward. NSXT, this, you very much, if you're using NSXT, we can work with you. You'll want to go through the technical frequently asked questions guide. There are 3 line items around NSXT. Questions you'll need to answer is, are you using distributed firewall? Are you using advanced threat protection? Are you using physical or virtual gateway appliances for your WAN connectivity for your virtual guests? There's a lot of moving pieces on that topic. I'm going to defer everyone either to a one-on-one conversation or read that guide. Maintenance mode. So a host in maintenance mode is not charged. So if you have some seasonal workload or something of that nature where you are going to have extra capacity, or let's say you did a big buy because it was easier to do the implementation of a chunk of hosts at one time, but you don't need them all immediately, hosts in maintenance mode can't run VMs. Hosts that can't run VMs are not going to be caught in metering. So this is going to change how we all think about our lifecycle work and how we think about transition. There's a specific line in the technical frequently asked guide around when is a host meterable. If a host is running virtual machines in a powered on state, it is metered. I haven't seen this quite yet in writing, but there was a lot of conversation around replicated machines. So if you are running a disaster recovery site for your customers, those machines are powered off. There was a lot of conversation around, are those machines charged or not? The guide specifically called out site recovery machine with vSphere replication or third-party storage replication. It isn't clear to me if that includes software-based tools to do disaster recovery replication or not, because they do specifically call out third-party storage replication. We all are going to need more detail around that. But if you have hosts in your primary site and you have a host that's sitting to the side and it's not running vSAN, if it's running vSAN, you are definitely going to pay licensing for those cores. That is going to happen. But if it's sitting off to the side and you're using it as a high availability host, all the documentation indicates that that host off to the side that's set up there only for failover or possibly for maintenance work, you will not have to pay for those cores if you're using a traditional storage platform, monolithic storage from your vendor of choice, Dell, NetApp, HP products, the whole gamut. VCF, as I've mentioned earlier, you don't need the full stack. You're going to still pay for everything in that SKU. Other things to be aware around your licensing is hourly cost. So all the overages, everything's an MSRP cost for your on-demand cores, but it is an hourly cost. So you can work with that similar to how people work in the public cloud for turning workload down just to reduce the cost and manage the costs. It's that $350 per year MSRP, so the on-demand annual contract value, it equates to about 40 cents per hour per core for what it will look like for those on-demand costs. Management clusters. This has been a big question because any large environment is going to have a management cluster that's going to run multiple vCenters, most likely, NSX managers, very likely ARIA products. That management cluster is treated as if it's a core. It is going to be billed. It is going to be treated as if it's your resource cluster. DR vSAN. So if you're running vSAN in your disaster recovery environment, those cores are going to be considered active. Even if that resource cluster does not have a single running machine, those cores are going to get counted because they're participating in vSAN. And that has a lot of long-term design implications for everyone on this call. For some, you're just going to shrink the environment, reduce how many hosts participate in the vSAN because you like the product. It's easy to use. It's easy to support. You can easily find somebody that can help you with that product in-house or through your white labeler. For others, you may make a decision to not use vSAN in your DR environment. Again, you will make what decision is best for your business, but there's options on the table that need to be identified. One of the biggest features that is in the technical FAQ is removing cores in BIOS UEFI. This is supported for us. I haven't seen an official licensing paper yet for resellers. I was on a call with VMware for last week regarding internal use licensing. And as everyone here has experienced, you got put on a call with someone who is not in the cloud service program. And I mentioned this because it's in the technical FAQ. And they said that's not right. This is in the guide. This is written in the document. I'm going to believe what is in the published document that has been given to us. But this has significant implications for all of us. It allows you to buy hardware and not use all of it like we used to buy hardware and then put more RAM in hardware as we got more business. But you are going to be able to buy hardware and disable some of those cores to reduce your licensing liability for the first year, the second year, maybe the third year as your business grows until you reach a point where you need those cores. So for example, if I'm using a 32 core CPU in a single socket, that would require 32 cores of licensing under VCF. Using these technologies, we can reduce the core count to 16 because that is our minimum core cost with VMware. It also aligns with Microsoft SPLA, so 16. The guide specifically calls out if those cores are not seen by the vSphere hypervisor, which they won't be because of how this technology works, you will only be obligated to pay those 16 cores of licensing. I think of this technology as capacity on demand. Earlier in my career, I remember being involved in a tape project to refresh somebody's tape infrastructure. And we went with a tape loader that had 80 slots for tapes. Now you can only use 50 of them unless you paid an extra license. They called it a capacity on demand license. You had to pay for that license to unlock the other 30 tapes in that library. And so I'm thinking of this similarly, where when you make a capital purchase, when you go through the process of implementing your environment, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of work to make that happen. With this line item in the technical FAQ, it gives us all some flexibility in aligning our revenue streams to our costs. It also is less physically intensive than going to a data center and pulling out a host and putting RAM in it. This happens all logically. I'm anticipating that more material is going to get published specifically around this feature in the days and weeks and months to come, because this is something that gives us back a way to have our revenue align with our costs. So for many of you on this call, you are interested in staying with VMware and looking for a white label partner. There are several questions you should be asking yourself is, how engaged do you want your white label partner to be? Do you want someone who is just going to pass the paper and you only are going to speak with them if there's a support issue and you possibly found a new bug? Do you want someone who can do a lot for you that can help you in other areas? So Atomic Data, we've mentioned, we are very heavy on VMware, but it isn't our only expertise. We have a very strong networking bench. For example, we did the design and implementation and do the support for Allianz Field here in Minneapolis and TQL Stadium in Cincinnati. Both are stadiums in the MLS program. One of those stadiums was built entirely around Cisco networking equipment. The other one was built entirely around HP Aruba. One of those was built with Dell hardware. The other one was built with HP servers. Both of them are running VMware vSAN. Both are using Veeam, and we are using all those pieces together. Those networks provide fan Wi-Fi to 20,000 plus fans. They're tied to ticketing, point of sale, network broadcast traffic. And we've been engaged with both those customers for multiple years. Atomic Data is a partner. We want to be in long-term partnerships with our customers. We are not in it for a quick deal. We want to be engaged for the long run. Another one of our customers, just to give some an example, is Great Clips. We've been partnered with Great Clips since the late 2000s. They have over 4,000 salons. We host greatclips.com. We do colo with them. We operate a service desk for them. We help them with their IT security and compliance, and they run systems in our Cloud Director instance. So as you interview and look at other white label partners, think about these things, like what strengths do the white labeler have that may help you? We also run Fortinet. We have a number of customers with that product, as well as other networking devices that they leverage to run their business. So we mentioned this earlier. Some of the things that we feel are key differentiators about Atomic Data is that we're privately held. We are very much in thinking long-term business arrangements. We are not thinking about the quarter. We are not thinking about how to make numbers look good on Wall Street. And we are not a national firm. So you may have a business that's located in Virginia. I'm not, while I may appear to be a competitor, I don't have any personnel there. I do not have a way to, I want to help you grow your business there. We have a very broad talent pool. We have our software development team. We have an entire team of network engineers. We have 2 teams that do systems engineering with VMware, and 1 team that entirely specializes on Cloud Director and those products. We are very fond of pay-as-you-go models. All of our contracts are month to month. We like that. We feel it helps us deliver the highest level of service. We are a high-touch, white-glove service organization. I mentioned this a little earlier. We are as an IT as a service. We do security, compliance, cloud support, monitoring, 24/7 NOC, enterprise networking. We very much focus on we will help our customers instead of this is what we do. We want to be helping them be supported and being successful. A couple of things also, 24/7 NOC and support. We have a 24/7, 365 business. We support our customers 24/7, 365. We have numerous individuals that have certifications across multiple different products. If you need somebody and want to talk to somebody that has a specialty in Microsoft database technologies, we have that. If you want to talk to someone who has networking expertise, perhaps someone with a Cisco specialty, we have that. We also want you to help continue to grow your brand and continue to have control of your environment. We've very much structured this so that you have all that. So at this point, I'm going to go through the white label model that we have developed and are bringing to market. As I said, we are a month-to-month time and materials environment. Flex is a true month-to-month commit product. It is designed for people that are either leaving VMware, they're unsure if they're going to be with VMware yet because things are changing in their business. This gives you a stopgap. It is a path. It has a price per core. There is a markup on that core because it is an MSRP price. It is designed for people who want flexibility in their product and what they're delivering. Support is time and materials on that offering. We are a time and materials shop. Many of you have very talented resources in-house. If you do not need to escalate, you just handle it in-house. Larger accounts will want to help you, will want to talk to you, will want to do some form of quarterly business review, likely. But we can be as engaged or as unengaged as you want. Steady, 36 months. We start with an 18% discount. We've broken out the pricing around price per core per month since many of you are used to thinking in that model around how your VRAM licensing is paid. We are going to have a setup fee that is 1 monthly plus add-ons. We have a footnote in here not to exceed $15,000. And then additional discounting and discount discussions can be avoided. Kyle, anything you want to jump in here?
No, I think you hit it spot on. The emphasis I want to put, though, is like we have maybe 2 or 3 clients that have a contract. This is a foreign territory to us to do a 36-month commit. I get the uncertainty and the liability with that. We feel very much in the same boat. And the odd thing with this model of being pushed down from Broadcom to what was the aggregator now to the white labeler is VMware/Broadcom is really pushing the liability down the chain and having us take out commitments in our behalf that we're now sitting here having to guarantee we're making these commitments, or else we're on the hook for it if someone were to be insolvent or have a dispute on payment or something of that nature. So really just tried to find the most amicable way to do this in a fair manner that shared the information transparently and hopefully made it as seamless as possible. And that's been the goal from day one for the last 4 weeks for Tim and I. Tim, could you elaborate a little bit more on what a setup fee, like what setup entails? And then also the benefits of setting it up in optimization stance.
So setup, the things that we will do in that setup are deploying a usage meter in your environment. That usage meter is going to be tied to us, and we'll see all your metering in the VCP portal. That is how we're going to be able to do the costing, pass the licensing through for what will come through us through the Cloud Commerce Manager. In addition, we are going to look at your environment and identify and work with you to see, can we help you optimize your cost? Can we reduce vCPUs on some of those virtual machines? Can we reduce some of the hardware? Can we shift some things around? Can we reduce cores that are in use in order to reduce the number of cores you have that you need right now that you're going to be interested in committing? On top of that, we're also going to just do a bit of a health check. So one of the items that's in, I think it's in the product licensing guide, is the specific guide. They actually talk out what versions we need to be on. And I've never really seen them heavily emphasize this, or I don't really remember it, but they want all of us on environments that are in place to be running the latest code within 12 months of when it goes GA. So we want to, review the health of your environment. If you're on a 6.5, 6.7 environment today, we want to help you form a plan on getting off that. That is going to be very, very difficult to support by your team, by our team. There's none of that code is even available anymore, as memory serves me. And then just general guidance, if there's any questions that you have as we work through this process. Anything else you would like to add, Kyle?
I'm good, thanks, Tim.
So at this point, we can start going through any questions that may have been posted in the chat. We'll try to answer them to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, so Tim, I've been answering a few as we've gone here. A couple of them I deferred to you here on, but to be clear, is it allowed to put VVF license on a dedicated environment for customers?
No. If it's everything is lining, if you're running a multi-tenant environment, multiple customers, you will be put into the VCF SKU. There is a way you could do VVF. You're going to end up reselling licenses to each individual client, running them separately on dedicated hardware as VVF, and going with the management of all that. It most likely is going to be more costly because you're not going to get the economies of scale and be able to oversubscribe the environment as much as you would in a service provider model.
There was a question on minimal commit, and I was hoping you could speak a little bit more as to what the collector sees and what that equates to the minimal commit, because it will be exactly what the collector tells us it is.
But yeah, the collector is going to tell us exactly what it sees. So if you deploy hardware and you don't change that hardware, let's say you deploy 4 hosts, 16 cores each, that's 64 cores, and that's what you run, the collector is going to see 64 cores of VCF licensing. You add a 5th host, it's going to see the additional 16 cores. If you have that in your commit already, your costs are going to be fixed. If you don't, it'll show up as an on-demand cost until you sign an incremental commit and all the paperwork passes through from you all the way through your white labeler, through the Cloud Commerce Manager, and up through Broadcom for adding it to an incremental commit and co-terming it.
And then I'm going to do one more here out of the Q&A section. I'll pop over to the chat and ask a couple of them there. But if you aren't using VCF today, specifically, we are using vSAN and ESXi only. Is there a technical ramification for migrating to VCF?
No, the guides that they've published specifically call out that there was a lot of back and forth on this from conversations we had upstream. Originally, they was VCF all the way. At the end of the day, they would prefer that you run the full stack. You're running Cloud Director, you're running all the pieces. There was enough pushback and realization that there is a market for running just virtual machines on ESXi. You don't have to have all the pieces in the stack. You can do a la carte. So if you just want to continue running the hypervisor, you can do so. I would encourage you to look and implement ARIA, the ARIA pieces, since those are included in your SKUs and they will help you in your environment, especially logging. If anyone uses logging solutions today and has looked at how some of those are priced, how that product is licensed to us is it's very good compared to Splunk and some of the other providers.
A couple other ones here. Do all support calls have to go through Atomic, or can we contact Broadcom directly? The answer to that is it will go through Atomic at that point in time. We then have an escalation path to what previously was known as the aggregators, and then to Broadcom directly. Next question, Tim, I'm running with a couple here. Is Atomic able to support global clients? Yes and no. Yes, we do have a global presence where we are supporting clients at a global scale, but where the data is hosted is going to be an interesting component for this. We are only authorized in the territory of the United States to be a white label partner. I know there are a couple firms that I've talked to throughout the last couple of weeks that had data centers both in Canada and in the US, and they can pull their licensing data out of either country. Those are some nuances we're going to want to hop on a call and walk through with you a little bit more. We obviously have some pretty tight guidelines that were proposed to us from Broadcom. Proposed is probably a loose term there on that one. Told. And we need to maintain our compliance with them at that point. But any way we can find a solution that's amicable to all parties and make it work, we're looking at it. If we went to buy through a white label like Atomic Data, do we also need to sign an agreement with Broadcom, VMware, or just with Atomic? You do need to be a registered partner with Broadcom in order to purchase white label agreements or white label resale agreements. Are there restrictions where we can use the licenses, such as who owns the hardware at our DR site? I think this is another one, and Tim, chime in where you want here, that we'd want to have some conversations on. You know, we talked to one organization earlier on that leverages a DR as a service where they're being leased or rented the hardware from that co-location provider or DR as a service provider. It gets a little dicey in there. I mean, I want a collector on it if it's our licensing going on there, but if you don't own the infrastructure, it probably is going to be coming from that provider. Tim, do you have any other commentary you want to put onto that?
This is new. So if we go back to what the old guy was, if you wanted to white label, it was running on the primary VCSPs in their environment. However, they deployed that environment. In this new model, they now have a line item for Model B, I believe is what the official guide says, where you keep operating things as you're doing today in your data center. You keep doing everything and you're just white labeling the licensing. My read of the document is that all VMware cares is that they're getting paid on the licensing side. I don't think the new doc says anything about who owns the hardware. I'm gonna want to double check that, but I don't recall anything that is gonna ruffle any feathers on that. We'll want to double check.
Okay. Do add-ons have to be committed?
No, you have the ability to do on demand for all the line items in that, recipe guide in that price sheet. So if you wanted to try something or leverage something with a new client, you can do that. I'm trying to think of an example that might pull up load balancing. Load balancing might be one where you're trying to determine, do you use a different platform or do you use the VMware licensing and use Avi? I guess our experience is you should use Avi. We recently moved completely off of F5. And a lot of it was because the licensing costs with Avi align much more closely to revenue streams associated with it than F5 did.
The next one here has Broadcom released new T's and C's for Premier or white label? So I'm going to answer this a little bit more roundabout just because we're getting up on an hour here, and I do want to leverage this to talk about kind of where we're at with our next steps. So there's a couple different agreements that we've had to do with Broadcom. We executed one 2 Thursdays ago. At that point, we need to execute an agreement with our aggregator, which is Insight Global. At this point, Broadcom had not given Insight the paperwork for them to then in turn give us the paperwork. We believe we will receive this Wednesday or Thursday of this week, hearing it directly from Broadcom and working the channels there that we have. We think we'll have our T's and C's from them to us at that point. So starting tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to start doing more of the legalese side on our end and writing whether it's a master services or general services agreement looks like specific to this product. Because again, this is very different than anything else in our line of business. It is unique to us at this point. Not white labeling as a whole, but at this scale with VMware at this point. So there's without a doubt some paperwork that needs to get moving and going from there. But once we have that in place, which we're hoping to have this week, we'll look to turn it around, get the SKUs entered into our CRM, and be able to start quoting this and putting a package together with an MSA. The other comment on there, I mentioned it in the intro, instead of doing a meeting for every single one of these, and we gladly will if people want to, but just feasibility and timeline of this and all of your schedules as well, I respect it. We're looking to do a web form out to start gathering some of these core requirements where we can build something, get that in our hands, and maybe have a conversation to talk about what that means after the fact, just to expedite some of the process. Without a doubt, some of these larger vSAN or AVI or gateways are going to take a little bit more conversation, and we will gladly hop on the phone and have some more conversation specific to each and every entity that's joined this call here. I'll reiterate it just because Scott commented on it. We will have a link of this recording available. Recording will be shared. So I would expect you get a copy of this recording, kind of our one pager or white page on this package, as well as a link to that web form as a follow-up from this meeting. And I'd imagine that goes out probably today. Couple more questions here. If we're considering the Flex plan as a stopgap, as we migrate away from VMware, can we set up the engagement to be limited? Engagement limited to just setting up the usage meters. We don't need to optimize an environment. We can certainly have a conversation around it. I do need to make sure your code versions are something that will play with what we're agreeing to and telling Broadcom that we're doing. But we are as hands-off as you want us to be. If you want an invoice to show up your way and you put an ACH on it and it comes back our way, I'm happy with that. I just need to make sure I'm not taking on any liability. Where can I find a list of partners that offering white label in different countries? Broadcom has, go for it, Tim.
Oh, there is. So once you have access to the Broadcom partner page, once you navigate to the cloud service provider, there is a list of white label companies such as ourselves that are providing white label in all the areas, EMEA, APAC, Australia, for who is interested in providing those services to other CSPs in those regions. And that list is literally changing every day.
Our hourly cost on T&M, I'm just going to say for general purposes, what we're talking about here will be between 160, might be 165 and 285, ranging from a level 1 to a level 3. Typically, our level 2s are $200 an hour, and that goes out the door. We do run the gamut, though, of 150 to 3.25 for just knowledge. Do we have any info on VCDA protections, not just migrations, usage, and price?
I believe that's going to be covered under SRM. There is a spot in one of the documents that implies you can use it for migrations, that's still a function and available to us for ingesting workload into our cloud environments, or other tools that you may have in-house that you've used. There is a, I don't remember off the top of my head, there is a spot in the technical FAQ specific around that piece, though.
Are we still using VCUM as a collector? Are you using VCUM as a collector, or is this custom to your shop?
We are still using vCloud usage meter. The usage meter, it needs to be running 4.8 by April 1st. What has been provided to all the Premier and Pinnacle partners that are interested in white labeling, we are responsible for that. We will be deploying it. We will be linking that meter to our VCP portal. We will be making sure that usage meter is talking to your vSphere host. It is talking to your NSXT environment. It is talking to all the pieces that are licensed software. Some of the pieces, starting April 1st, are going to require some level of manual reporting. And so we will be working with you for those particular products, if you're using them, and identify what those actual costs are until they finish finalizing code that will collect that information.
And what looks to be the last question posted here, what are the breakpoints on volume discounts? It really depends what you have. If it's a straight core plan, it's pretty simple. We have a tiered system in mind that we put together we want to use. If it gets into using a bunch of the add-on services in there, want to have a conversation, want to understand the environment, and want to work with each and every one of you, and however we can make that work in an amicable way. Last note here, one more additional piece of material that will be going out will be our labor rate sheet that will show all those prices.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I'm Tim Grosshuesch. This has been Kyle Johnson. We hope that this has been helpful for all of you.
And most of you at this point either have my email or my cell phone. If there are questions, anything of that nature, don't hesitate, fire them our way. There's a couple other people from Atomic on the line here that are happy to hop on calls and help with us, and we'll just keep moving forward with what we learned from Broadcom and hopefully partner up with each and every one of you.